Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted to be joined by Elliot Grigg. We are discussing all things Tyson Fury and what's going to happen in 2023 for the 6'9" heavyweight. Elliot, thank you for a bit of your time this evening. How's things?
Good man. Yeah, good. Obviously, we had the Fury fight last weekend, which was obviously we're recording this obviously post Chisora. That was disappointing. Hopefully, we can talk about some fights that are going to be more exciting involving Tyson Fury in 2023. But yeah, I'm really happy to share it with you. Thank you guys for watching, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, all good. I feel like it's been an interesting, not really interesting. It's been a strange year for Fury because on one hand, we've not seen the fights we wanted to see, and we've seen uncompetitive fights against Dillian White and Derek Chisora. On the other hand, they've both been in like massive football stadiums, so it's just like to like a casual fan or to someone who's not a boxing fan, they might look and think, "Oh, wow, that looks amazing." Whereas actually, the fights haven't been hugely entertaining. And I think what we've seen in his past two fights is the power of casual fans who, when there's a big name out there, like Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, they don't have to fight a top competitor, and people will still turn up.
I think it also shows, possibly, and you might disagree or agree with this, but I think it also shows how the sort of boxing subculture which we find ourselves in is actually quite narrow when it comes to the mainstream market. And you're sitting there obviously looking at the draw fight and going, this is horrendous, the undercard's terrible pretty much. I mean, the Duval fight turned out all right, to be fair, with the drama, but you're looking at it on a piece of paper and going, don't fancy standing in the cold watching this, barely fancy sitting at home watching it. And then you turn around and it's like, what are these 60,000 people doing? Where are they coming from? Like, why are they paying all this money? So yeah, I agree with you. Like, it does show the power of that. But I suppose some of the fights we will discuss, it kind of shows you how potentially big they could be if there was a sort of stadium or venue able to hold them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll get straight into it. Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk. Do you think that fight is going to happen next?
I did. Before this fight happened, I did think this was going to happen next. But then as soon as Fury started talking about his elbow injury and his need for an operation, I was thinking, we've been here a bit before. I still like to think it would happen next. I kind of don't see, to be honest with you, I don't see many avenues for Fury, frankly. I think I only see really three plausible opponents for Fury. I think we're going to touch on all three of them here. As in plausible, I mean the only ones people want to see him in anyway. And I think he, for all his bombast and chat, realises that also. Usyk, again, is 35, 36. He needs to really be fighting Fury. He needs to really be fighting someone of either Fury or someone like Wilder, for example. Someone of that name. Again, like you want someone that's going to motivate you and essentially cash out and be worthy of those belts. So I'm still leaning more towards yes, but not with the sort of cast iron certainty that I was before. And I think maybe if Fury does have to have an operation, we'll be talking sort of March, even April time, really. I don't see it happening in sort of February, as we were sort of thinking at some point.
Yeah, it sounds positive. It sounds like all the governing bodies would allow the undisputed fight to happen. It sounds like Saudi Arabia or somewhere else in the Middle East would be the prime venue for that. Obviously, Usyk's not fought for 2-3 months now since the Joshua rematch. So I feel like, I think a lot of it depends on now, does Fury need surgery? And if he does, when would the fight then happen? And is Usyk willing to wait until May, June, maybe? Because Usyk might want to fight in February, March. So I think that's the key thing here. I think it really is. And we could have a situation when Usyk fights in February, March, but then maybe Fury wants to have one more before fighting Usyk. It could go into that sort of spiral. But we'll see. Would you agree with that, or do you think it depends on other things?
No, I do kind of agree with that, but I also kind of think that I think Usyk's really hankering for this, and I think that there's also perception of the way things are going. Like Usyk's team talk very clearly in that kind of Eastern European no nonsense kind of way. If like this is what's happening, this is what we want, kind of thing, which is commendable. And I almost feel like Fury by trying to wriggle out of it and by fighting, I don't know, going back to Wembley and fighting David Adelaide, we would not go, what the fuck is going on? So I do think it's actually harder for him to wriggle out. I feel like he was possibly obviously in that position with Joshua. I think my gut feeling from those negotiations really were that Fury was driving them and that Joshua's team didn't fancy it for financial reasons and for other loss reasons. But I kind of feel like, to be honest with you, I do kind of feel like Fury believes what he's saying about Usyk being kind of an easier fight for him. And I actually kind of think I'd still pick Fury to beat him. I don't think it'd be easy necessarily, but I think the attributes he's got, Fury will win that fight. So I don't even necessarily see it as being the kind of like the overwhelming doubt that Joshua would have fighting someone like Fury. So I still kind of think it will happen for that reason. But I just think if you're right in a way, I do think Usyk would still take it if it went into April. Don't think you'd sort of waste too much time on maybe a mandatory unless it sort of had to happen. But yeah, I just don't want to see that spiral happen. I'm not prepared to keep thinking about it.
Yeah.
I still think if it happens before April, it will happen with them too.
Yeah, fingers crossed. A final thing from me, I think it was a very good thing that Usyk was there at ringside, because it's meant that they've come face to face. He's obviously, I don't think Usyk wouldn't be there at ringside if he didn't want that fight. I think Fury didn't have to kind of walk up to him and call his name out after the fight finished. So yeah, that's a positive thing he was there. Moving on, other person who was there at ringside and Saturday night was Joyce. We're both probably the two biggest fans of Joyce in the world, I would say. Both big fans.
If Joe's watching,
yeah,
we love you, Joe. And
Joe Joyce is in kind of a mandatory position. Looks like he is going to be fighting for a world title next year. Whether that's against for a vacant belt or the winner of Fury Usyk possibly. But do you see a world where Fury beats Usyk in March and then fights Joyce in September, October? How likely do you think that is?
No, I don't see that happening. Just because I think Joyce is a tough fight. But like, don't get me wrong, I'd like to see Joyce fight either Fury or Usyk. I think the size difference that he would have over Usyk and the sort of style would be a hell of a fight. And obviously with their amateur background, still think Fury beats Joyce, frankly, but just due to fitness and the fact that even though Joyce puts it on people for 12 rounds, I think Fury's got conditioning to deal with it. But I think if Fury beats Usyk, say in March, April, I don't see him necessarily wanting or needing to take a hard fight like that. And I think Joyce is what now, 37 or something. Yep. So it's like, I don't know. I just don't see it. I think there's other opponents he could fight and then still sit there and give it. I've had an incredible year, one champion, one name, all that sort of business. Wouldn't need to necessarily entertain it. The only way I can kind of see him fighting Joyce is if the Usyk fight somehow falls through and with them both sort of having that sort of Queensberry affiliation. I can see that potentially happening. And I do think, whilst it'd be a tough night, I think Fury come through it as well, to be honest. But it would be a credible opponent. And one of those names I would like to see on Fury's record that he needs to keep putting on there, frankly, because it's long been a criticism that he doesn't have the names that like Joshua has on his record. And I think this is a stage where you start getting some names on there. So I'd welcome Joyce as a fight, frankly, for that reason.
For sure. And I think that people are losing. People are starting to lose a bit of patience with Fury because he's not fought. I know he has fought Wilder, obviously fought Klitschko quite a long time ago now, but people are now looking at Joyce thinking, oh, that's an interesting fight. Usyk, that's an interesting fight. Of course, there's still demand for the Joshua fight as well. And so there are still big, although Fury's 33, 34 years old, accomplished a lot, won every belt there is to win, there are actually blatant fights there that people want to see him in. He can't turn around and say, I've beaten everyone there is to beat. There's nothing left for me to do. He can't say that yet. Yeah. What's the tougher fight for Fury, Usyk or Joyce? I'm putting on you this evening, I'm afraid. It's a good
question. They're both obviously tough for very different reasons.
Night's work?
Like the boxing ability of Usyk will be tough, but I just think the size difference means really that. I was thinking about this earlier in relation to I give away my age a bit here, but David Haye versus Valiev in the sense, and you're sort of seeing someone come up like that. But obviously, Valiev was 7 foot, Haye was shorter. But he had enough differential in speed, in general boxing ability, and in sort of power to negate that height disadvantage. I don't think the differentials will be there with Usyk and Fury, frankly. Like you can argue, and I'm not gonna bite anyone's head off for saying that they think Usyk's a better boxer than Fury. Even though I think it's quite close. But I think speed-wise, general talent-wise, Usyk hasn't got that advantage over Fury to negate the height. So I do think I still think it'd be quite not an easy fight. You don't want to say Usyk beating Usyk's easy, but I think it won't be as competitive in some ways as a lot of people think it will be. Joyce, I don't believe I'm saying this. Joyce would be a good fight, but I think equally you've got to sit there and think, well, Joyce gets hit a lot, and we've seen Fury stop Wilder. So don't get me wrong, Joyce has obviously got a tough head and a tough chin, but I think I'd actually back Fury to potentially stop him in that fight if he wanted to. Genuinely, not early, it'd be late, or he could just jab him around. I think with the conditioning of it and the boxing ability in his movement, he'd beat Joe Joyce. So basically, what I'm not actually saying, without saying it, is I don't bloody well know. But I think I go the harder fight. I would say Usyk just because I think I don't see Fury stopping Usyk. I don't see him necessarily being able to land on him as cleanly as he would land on someone like Joyce. And I think there'll be tight rounds in there, depending on tactically how he fought it. If he tried to do the Klitschko route and jab and move, could see that. Don't think he'll necessarily stop Usyk just because we've seen Usyk take punches before. We've seen Usyk be elusive. So I'd go with that. I think it'll be a points victory for Fury, but I think it'll be generally tougher stylistically than it would be against Joyce.
Good stuff. Good answer. Final fighter we're going to touch on. Obviously, we've discussed this before. Probably discuss it again. I think Tyson Fury referred to Anthony Joshua as a sausage on the Saturday night. I was at the post-fight press conference and just said, no, never going to happen. Was quite dismissive about it. As we know, he called Joshua out for this December fight, and for one reason or another, he hasn't fought Joshua. Joshua, I think, is expected the next fight in March or April. Opponent to be determined. Do you see that? What two questions? Do you think that fight will happen? Yes or no? Two, how much do you want to see that fight?
Do I think it will happen? No. I did think until the last round of negotiations, I thought we'd see it at some point, and I thought it'd be when potentially one of them, or if not both of them, were on the decline. Now I just don't think we'll see it. And the reason for that is I think it's got lots of, I think, to be honest with you, Joshua, I've seen some worrying signs from Joshua, this sort of picking trainers, moving around, changing style, which doesn't seem to have the sort of identity or the sort of mental belief and fortitude that he once had, which is, understandable coming off losses, I suppose, but no shame in losing to Usyk. But equally, I think there's a definite shift in perception where people are going, Fury will beat you. Usyk has beaten you. Joyce might beat you. And Wilder, in my opinion, a lot of people will beat you. So it's like, I think for him, it's tricky because you're sitting there going, well, who am I going to fight? Probably Dillian White next. He'll beat Dillian White, fine. I still put Joshua in top four, put him in there with Wilder, Usyk, Fury as the four. I actually think Joshua would beat Joe Joyce as well. Be a tough night for him, but I still think he'd hit him regularly enough that I actually think Joshua might get a stoppage if he wanted it. But I think with the design contract, the money involved, the fact that I genuinely don't think he'll be fighting as long as we think, I don't see that fight happening. No, I don't see it happening, and I think he'll go a route of maybe fighting some of the sort of younger guys that are coming through after he fights possibly Dillian White and looks to cash in that way. I don't see him fighting Fury, no, or Wilder. Yeah. I don't see him fighting Wilder either, to be honest.
No, I think that a lot of the time with boxing, the big super fights happen too late. I've got 3 examples. Amir Khan, Kell Brook happened 10 years too late. Errol Spence Crawford, I think, will happen, but again, it will happen 3, 4, 5 years too late. And Pacquiao Mayweather's the best. Or Mayweather Pacquiao's the best example. Happened 9 years later than we wanted to see it. And I think there's a chance that will happen with Joshua Fury. We'll be here in 2025, 2026, when both of them are kind of 36, 37 years old. And it will finally happen, and it won't be what it was because both will be past their peak. I hope that doesn't happen. It just feels like that happens a lot in boxing, and that wouldn't surprise me if that happened here.
Yeah, no, I think that's the case. I think in boxing, like I said, the perception has shifted. I don't think Joshua. I never thought he was bulletproof, frankly. And I think that's been on record. I've been saying that many times. And obviously, the CV that he has, I thought, was somewhat inflated. And I think a lot of people are seeing that. And also, I kind of feel that, taking nothing away from him, I just don't see him being able to stop Fury. Like, Fury's obviously been with Wilder, has been knocked down by Wilder, but has obviously got up. And then Wilder punches harder than Joshua. I just don't see Joshua stopping him. So, yeah, I think to be honest with you, out of those 3 opponents, it's almost the fight I'd like to see least now. Weirdly, it sounds weird to say that. I know a lot of people are kind of like after timing it a bit with Joshua and saying, "Oh, he's finished, he's fought Usyk, etc." A lot of the sort of casual market seem to see his sort of value in free fall somewhat. But I still think obviously he's got a lot of value, and I still think he's entertaining. I just don't those three opponents. I think he's arguably the easiest fight of the three for Fury.
Good point, and we will leave it there. Lots to unravel. As always, just hope we see these fights. Hope we're not talking about Tyson Fury versus Derek Chisora 4 in a few months' time, or fighting someone.
Well, by the time we talk about AJ Fury, I'll be completely bald, and you'll be great, and we'll both be past our best.
Yeah, no, you could be right. That's probably my prediction, to be honest. That you be bald, me to be grey by the time that Joshua Fury does happen. I think that's a possibility. Elliot Grigg, thank you for joining me. Looking forward to seeing what 2023 holds for Tyson Fury. Hopefully we see these mega fights. Hopefully we see more stadium fights against more legitimate opponents this time. But yeah, we will see. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, and thank you guys for watching. Thank you.